You step out onto your porch on a warm evening, coffee in your hand, the sun going down soft and gold behind the tree line, and before you even sit, you hear it, that thin little whine right by your ear. Then the sting on your ankle, you slap, you miss, and just like that, the evening you waited for all day is ruined. Here is what I know to be true. You can empty your whole yard of them, nearly every last one. Not with a machine that costs more than your first car. Not with a man in a truck who comes around every month and hands you a bill. You can do it with something that costs about $1. My people have done it this way for generations, long before the outside world ever had a fancy name for it. And the folks who sell you the foggers, the misting systems, the monthly spray plans, they have no reason on this green earth to tell you what we already knew. So stay with me. Around the middle of this, I am going to show you how to turn one old bucket into a quiet little trap that clears the mosquitoes out of your entire yard for less than the price of a cup of coffee, the very same way my grandfather did it behind the barn. Before we go a step further, do me one small kindness. Drop your state down in the comments below and tell me one thing about your mosquitoes. Do they come at you mostly at dawn and dusk, or do they bite you all day long? It matters far more than you would ever guess, and before we are done, I will tell you exactly why. I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, on a piece of ground my family worked for the better part of 100 years. I remember being maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing by the rain barrel at the corner of the barn on a still August evening, and my grandfather coming up behind me. He looked into that barrel, saw the little wrigglers turning in the water, and he tipped the whole thing over onto the grass without a word. Then he looked at me and said, "You do not fight the bug, you take away the cradle." I did not understand it then, I understand it now, and by the end of this, you will too. Let me start with the thing almost nobody gets right, because it is the whole game, and the industry would rather you never learn it. A mosquito cannot be born on dry land. It simply cannot. Every single mosquito that bites you tonight was born in water. Standing, still water. Not a pond down the road, not a swamp a mile away. Water right there on your own property, closer to your back door than you think. Now, here is the part that stops people cold. A mosquito does not need a puddle. It does not need a bird bath. A female mosquito can lay her eggs and raise a full brood of biters in about 1 teaspoon of water. 1 teaspoon. That is not an exaggeration, and it is not folklore. That is the plain biology of the thing. The bottle cap you tossed in the flower bed last fall. The saucer under your potted geranium. The fold in the tarp over your woodpile. The old tire behind the shed with an inch of rainwater sitting in it. Every one of those is a nursery, and every one of them is quietly producing the very bugs you are slapping off your arm. And they are fast. From the day she lays her eggs to the day a grown mosquito lifts off and comes looking for you is only about 8 to 10 days in the warm part of summer. 8 days. That means the water sitting in your yard right now, the water you have walked past a dozen times this week, is on a clock. Wait too long and you have a fresh batch every week and a half, all season long. Here is what my grandfather understood that most of your neighbors do not. You will never win by spraying the sky. The adult mosquito flying around your head is the end of the story. By the time she finds you, she has already done her work, and 20 more are coming behind her. The only way to truly win is to go back to the cradle, the way we always have, and empty it. So this weekend, before you spend $1 on anything, walk your property slow. Walk it like you are looking for a lost ring in the grass. Tip over anything holding water, the kid's old wagon, the dog bowl you forgot about, the clogged corner of the gutter, the wheelbarrow, the dented lid of the trash can. Dump it, flip it, drill a hole in the bottom of it so it can never hold water again. My father used to say a good farmer walks his fence line every week, and I am telling you to walk your water line every week. Do only this, and you will cut your mosquitoes by more than half before you have opened your wallet. But here is the trouble, and it is the trouble that sends most folks running to the store and reaching for their credit card. You cannot flip everything. You cannot dump the pond. You cannot pour out the low spot in the yard that fills every time it rains. You cannot empty the rain barrel you actually need for the garden. There is always water you must keep. So what do you do about the water that has to stay? That is where the dollar comes in. And that is where an entire industry has been quietly picking your pocket for 50 years. There is a bacterium. It lives naturally in the soil, all over the world, right under your feet. Scientists first isolated the useful strain of it back in 1976. in the dirt of a dried-up pond bed in the Negev desert over in Israel. The full name is a mouthful, so folks just call it BTI. And what it does is one of the most beautiful little mercies in all of nature. You put a small amount of it in standing water. The mosquito larvae, the little wrigglers, they eat it because that is what they do all day. They filter the water and eat. But BTI only harms a few specific insects in their water stage. Mosquito larvae, black fly larvae, fungus gnats. That is nearly all. When a mosquito larva eats it, a protein crystal inside that bacterium unlocks in the larva's gut and shuts it down. The wriggler stops eating and dies within a day or two before it ever grows wings, before it ever bites a soul. And here is the part that ought to make you a little bit angry once it sinks in. That same BTI is harmless to your fish, harmless to your dog lapping from the pond, harmless to the honeybees, the frogs, the toads, the birds, the earthworms. Harmless to you and your grandchildren. It targets the gut of the mosquito larva and passes everything else by. It has been studied for decades by University Extension Services from Florida clear up to Cornell, and it holds up every single time. This is not a harsh poison. It is a living thing doing what it was made to do. Now, you can buy this. It comes pressed into a little floating cake about the size of a donut, and one cake treats about 100 square feet of water surface for around 30 days. And one of those cakes, bought smart, runs you about $1. A single dollar to keep a rain barrel, a pond edge, or a low wet spot completely clear of mosquitoes for a solid month. So ask yourself, if $1 of a naturally occurring soil bacterium can shut down mosquito breeding for 30 days, harming nothing else on your property, then why is there a truck that comes to your neighbor's house every month? Why is there a misting system on the market that costs $3,000 to install and hundreds a year to run? Why are the shelves at the big box store stacked 10 feet high with sprays and foggers and candles and clip-on gadgets? Because there is no money in a dollar cake that lasts a month and solves the problem at the root. There is a great deal of money in a mosquito you never actually get rid of. The whole business runs on you staying itchy. My people were never their customers because we never bought into the fear in the first place. We just took away the cradle, season after season, and went on with our evenings in peace. So drop the cake in the water you have to keep. Break a piece off for the small stuff, a clogged drain, a saucer you cannot move. Refresh it about once a month through the warm season. That handles the water you cannot dump. But I promised you the whole yard, and I mean the whole yard, so we have to talk about the ones already flying. Because even after you have taken care of every drop of water on your land, a few will always drift in from the neighbor's place or the ditch down the road. And here is where the outside world has completely overlooked the simplest tool of all, a tool you almost certainly already own. Think about how a mosquito actually moves. You picture it darting around, quick and clever. It is not. A mosquito is one of the weakest flyers in the whole insect world. Full out, in still air, a mosquito tops out at somewhere around 1 to 1.5 miles an hour. That is slower than you walk to the mailbox. A gentle breeze, the kind that barely stirs the leaves, is a hurricane to a mosquito. She cannot make headway against it. She gets shoved sideways and gives up. Now, think about how she finds you in the first place. She is not seeing you across the yard. She is following two things on the air. The carbon dioxide you breathe out, drifting off you in a slow, invisible plume, and the warmth and scent rising off your skin. She flies up that plume like a hound on a trail, right to your ankle. It works beautifully in still air. So here is what my mother did on the porch on the hottest, stillest nights, long before anyone wrote a study about it. She set an old box fan on the floorboards and pointed it out across where we sat. That is all. And it works two ways at once. First, the moving air is simply too strong for the mosquito to fly through, so she cannot land on you. Second, and this is the clever part, the fan scatters your carbon dioxide and your scent trail into 100 pieces, so the mosquito loses the thread entirely. She cannot find the plume, and even if she does, she cannot fly up it. You have made yourself invisible and untouchable with a fan you already have in the closet. And this is not just an old family trick. The American Mosquito Control Association looked into this very thing, and researchers found that a simple household fan on a porch cut the number of mosquitoes landing on people by around 65%, and in some setups even more. 65% from a box fan, not a special machine, not a subscription, a $20 fan you plug in on the porch. So on your worst nights, Set a fan low, aim it across your feet and ankles, because that is where they bite most, down low where the heavier carbon dioxide pools. Point a second one out toward the yard if you have it. You will feel the difference the first evening. My grandfather would have called that using what the good Lord already gave you, instead of paying a man for what you do not need. Now, before I hand you the rest of these old ways, let me tell you where every one of them lives together in one place. You walked your yard, you tip the buckets, and still there is that one low spot behind the shed that fills every time it rains, and you stand over it not knowing what is safe to drop in it. That gnawing feeling, wondering if what you use will hurt the dog or the grandkids, is the exact thing I set out to end for good. That is why I put everything I know into a written collection you can hold in your hands. The garden blueprint shows you the one systematic mistake that makes every fix temporary, and it lays out the $5 CO2 trap with honest results and no inflated claims. The Complete Garden Field Edition goes further, with a 30, 60, 90-day yard rescue seasonal calendar and a diatomaceous earth and borax quick reference field card, so you always know what is safe for kids, pets, and your patients. And here is a test you can run tonight for free to prove it to yourself. Go find one saucer under a potted plant, dump it, and set a reminder to check it every 3 days, like I said. Watch how a spot that used to hatch biters stays dead quiet. That is the whole method working right in front of you. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And this is honest work for right now, because those wrigglers in your standing water are already on that 8 to 10 day clock, hatching a fresh batch while you wait. All right, back to your yard, because the biggest hidden factory of all is hanging right over your head. But I can hear some of you thinking it already. This is fine for a fresh start, you are saying. This is fine for a young couple with a new little yard and nothing in it, but my place is established. I've got 40 years of shrubs and beds and a mature yard with 100 hiding spots, and I cannot go flipping every bucket, and I've got standing water in places I did not even know about. Does any of this even work for a yard like mine? I want to speak to you directly for a minute, because you are the one this matters to most. An old, established, settled yard is not your problem. It is your advantage, if you know where to look. And there are 3 things you can do this very weekend with nothing but your own 2 hands that will hit an established yard harder than any spray truck ever could. The first is your gutters, and I mean this with all seriousness. On an older home with mature trees around it, the gutters are almost always the single biggest mosquito factory on the whole property, and nobody ever thinks to look up. Leaves pack into the low end of the gutter, they rot down into a black sludge, and water sits in that sludge all summer long. It is warm, it is full of the rotting organic matter mosquitoes love above all else, and it is up where you never see it. I have known people to fog their entire yard every week and never once think to look at the trough hanging off their own roof. Clean your gutters, get them draining, and you may knock out a nursery that has been quietly hatching thousands of bites a season right over your head. The second thing is your ground itself, the low spots, and the shade. In an established yard, you have got settled ground with dips and hollows that hold water after every rain, under the deck, behind the shed, along the foundation, in the deep shade where the sun never dries it out. Mosquitoes love that shady, damp, still ground more than anywhere else, because they cannot take the hot sun. Take a walk 2 days after a good rain, when the puddles show themselves plain, and mark every spot that still holds water. Those are your targets. Fill the low ones with a little soil so they drain. The ones you cannot fill, the ones under the deck or along the foundation, break off a little piece of that dollar cake and drop it right in. You do not have to redo your whole yard. You just have to find the 4 or 5 wet spots that are doing 90% of the damage. And the third thing, the one that catches almost everybody, is anything decorative that holds a little water. The bird bath you love, the old wheelbarrow you planted flowers in, the folds in the pool cover, the tarp over the boat, the saucers under every potted plant on the patio, that corrugated drain pipe running out from the downspout, half full of water in its ribs. An established, well-loved yard is full of these, because we fill our places with things over the years. Here's the rule that makes it simple, and it comes straight from that 8 to 10 day clock we talked about. A mosquito needs the water to sit still for about a week to raise a brood. So the bird bath does not have to go. You just have to dump it and refill it every 3 days. 3 days, and you have broken the cycle before a single one can grow wings. Keep the beauty. Just keep the water moving. None of that costs you a dime. Not one. It costs you a Saturday morning and a pair of eyes that finally know where to look. And an established yard, once you have hit those 3 things, gets quiet in a way a new yard never does, because you have found and shut down the hidden factories that were running for years. Now, you have done the work. You have flipped the containers, dropped the cakes in the water you keep, cleaned the gutters, set the fan on the porch, and started dumping the bird bath every 3 days. Your yard is already 90% quieter than your neighbors. But I promised you the whole yard, down to nearly the last one, and I promised you a secret my grandfather used behind the barn. So lean in, because this is the piece almost no one out in the English world knows, and it turns everything you have learned so far completely on its head. Everything up to now has been about taking water away from the mosquito. This last trick is about giving her water on purpose, the exact water she wants most, and then turning it into a grave. We call it the bucket, the trap that clears the yard. And it works on the one truth about a female mosquito that all your dumping and flipping cannot change. She has to lay her eggs somewhere. If your whole yard is clean and dry, she is flying around desperate, holding a belly full of eggs, hunting for the one dark, still, stinking little pool of rotten water she can trust. So you are going to give her exactly that. You are going to make the most tempting, most irresistible nursery on the whole block. And every mother mosquito for 100 yards around is going to fly straight to it, past your porch, past your ankles, to lay her eggs in the one spot where not a single one of them will ever survive. Here is how you build it, and every bit of this is a dollar store affair. Take a 5-gallon bucket, the kind you already have in the garage, or even a big dark planter or an old tub. Dark colored is better because they favor the dark water. Fill it most of the way with water. Now here is the secret that makes it work, and this is the part the old-timers knew and the science only caught up to later. You have to make that water stink the right way. A mosquito mother is not looking for clean water. She is looking for water full of rot, because rot means there will be plenty for her babies to eat. So you throw in a couple big handfuls of grass clippings, or dry hay, or a few fistfuls of fallen leaves, a little straw, whatever organic matter you have got. Then you let that bucket sit in a shady corner for 3 or 4 days and go a little foul. What you are making is what the university researchers down at the University of Florida's Institute studied and called a hay infusion. When grass and hay steep in warm water, they ferment, and they release a smell. And to a pregnant mosquito, that smell is a ringing dinner bell. Their tests found that gravid females, the ones ready to lay, will pass right by plain, clean water to get to that fermented brew. It pulls them from all across the yard. You have built the single most attractive maternity ward a mosquito could ever dream of. And now you spring the trap. You drop a piece of that same $BTI cake into the bucket. Just a chunk of it. That is the whole thing. Now every mother in the neighborhood comes to your bucket, lays her precious eggs in the one perfect pool she could find, and every last wriggler that hatches eats the BTI and dies before it grows up. She thinks she has won. She has flown right into the only water in the county that will never ever produce a biting mosquito. My grandfather did not have the fancy cake, so he used a thin film of the plainest cooking oil across the top instead, which smothers the wrigglers and the surfacing pupae just the same and costs nearly nothing. Either way, the bucket does the work for you, day and night, while you sit on the porch in peace. Think about what that means. You are not just protecting your yard anymore. You are reaching out and pulling in the breeding females from the neighbor's place and the ditch and the field beyond, and quietly ending the whole next generation. One bucket, tucked in a shady corner, refreshed with a little grass and a fresh chunk of cake every couple weeks. Set 2 or 3 of them around the edges of a bigger property and you draw a ring of protection around the whole place. This is the finale. This is the thing that clears the yard down to almost nothing, and it costs you about $1 and an old bucket. Now here is why I asked you at the start whether your mosquitoes bite at dawn and dusk or all day long. Because it tells you which kind you are fighting, and it tells you exactly where to set your bucket. The ones that hunt you at dawn and dusk and love the open yard, those are your house and field mosquitoes, and they will find a bucket set out in the open near where they breed. But the ones that bite you all day long, especially in the shade near the house, those are the container breeders. The ones living in your gutters and your saucers and your tucked away corners. And for those, you set the bucket right in the shade close to the house where they lurk. Tell me in the comments which one you have, and you will know just where yours belongs. Sit with what all of this really means for a minute. For 50 years, the outside world was told mosquitoes are a problem you manage by spending money forever. A little more every year. A spray, a candle, a gadget, a truck, a system, a subscription that never ends because the problem never ends, because it was never in anyone's interest for it to end. A whole industry built brick by brick on keeping you slapping at your own arm on your own porch. And the whole time, the answer was $1 and a bucket and a box fan and a Saturday morning walk around your own yard. The answer was to take away the cradle and set out one perfect trap. That is not something I invented. That is not something a company discovered and packaged up to sell you. That is knowledge my people simply never let go of, while the rest of the world was busy being told it needed to buy its way out of a mosquito bite. You did not lose this knowledge because it stopped working. You lost it because there was more money in you not having it. And tonight you have it back. You are the kind of person who would rather use what nature and the old ways already provide than keep paying year after year for what you never needed in the first place. That is not being cheap. That is being wise. That is stewardship, the way I was raised to understand it, not wasting what the good Lord already set right there in the soil under your feet. So here is what I ask of you. Go back down to the comments and tell me your state, and tell me plain, do your mosquitoes come at dawn and dusk, or do they bite you all the day long? I read them, and I will help you place your bucket where it will do the most good. Do not just think it to yourself. Type it out and leave it there, because somebody else in your same state is going to read your answer and get help from it too. And if you want more of this, the plain and simple ways my people have leaned on for generations, the ways the outside world buried because there was no dollar in them, then come along with us. This is not about following a channel. It is about a table full of folks who are done overpaying for what the old ways already solved, sitting back down together and remembering it out loud. Because next time, I am going to show you the one common plant, one that may already be growing wild along your fence line right now without you even knowing what it is, that my grandmother crushed and rubbed on our arms on the worst summer evenings. The plant the bug spray companies would very much prefer you never learn to recognize. Take away the cradle, set out the bucket, and I will see you there. Stay with me just a moment longer, because this video gave you the overview, but there's more. Inside the Amish field circle, I walk you through the full bucket trap build, picking up right where we stopped. Get stuck? Ask me your own question, and a real person me answers you myself. You won't be alone. Old ways growers like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime, one click. If this helped you take back your yard, there's plenty more like it waiting for you right here. Just subscribe and keep watching, because I've got more simple, safe tips coming your way.